You see those everyday snapshots online, smiles, those seemingly normal lives. And then a story just surfaces that stops you cold. It's a brutal reminder of how fragile that can all be. Today we're going into one of those cases, the story of Nadine Lott, a tragedy so stark, really became the focus of that YouTube documentary, Uno de los crímenes más atroces de la historia. Documental Nadine Lott.
Yeah, and look, this isn't an easy story to cover, but it's one we feel is important to understand. We've spent time with the transcript of the Historia Criminal documentary,
Right.
and it lays out a deeply, deeply upsetting sequence of events. Our goal here isn't shock value, obviously, but to carefully examine what happened, the dynamics, sort of try to understand how it got to that point.
Exactly, because I know for you listening, these kinds of events, they raise really difficult questions, don't they? About relationships, about hidden violence, how something so devastating can just unfold.
Yeah.
So we want to explore this with care. Try to pull out the crucial insights without, overwhelming anyone with unnecessary detail. And the documentary transcript, it really provides a very thorough account of Nadine's life and, well, everything that happened.
And it's vital to be clear about our purpose here. We want to unpack this heartbreaking story, identify the key elements, and maybe try to understand some of the underlying factors. But above all, we aim to do this with respect for Nadine Lott and her family. That's something that really comes through in the documentary itself, that respect.
Definitely. Okay, so to start to understand this, let's get to know Nadine a bit. She was born in Arklow, County Wicklow, in Ireland, late 80s, daughter of Claire and David, siblings Taj, Kyle, and PB. And the documentary suggests right from the start she had this remarkable presence.
Yeah, the transcript paints a picture of someone just truly vibrant. She was described as extroverted, sympathetic, the kind of person who just effortlessly connected with people. Had a real gift for making people laugh. And as she grew, this charisma, it seemed to just deepen. Apparently, even a simple greeting from her could make someone feel totally welcome. People genuinely enjoyed being around her.
It sounds like she had this real ability to connect, like on a deeper level, not just surface stuff. She was also seen as very sensitive, someone who truly believed in seeing the good in people. And her upbringing, that Lott household, seems pretty significant too, a stable, loving environment built on trust, something her parents, Claire and David, actively cultivated. What might that kind of foundation mean looking back?
Well, that foundation of warmth and trust, it could have really shaped her expectations, her approach to relationships later on. The documentary highlights her love for photography.
Right.
But it wasn't just about taking pictures. She consciously aimed to capture memories. That's what she told her mother. And she had this keen eye for aesthetics, apparently always looked put together, even just exercising. And this passion, it led her to become a beautician, a career she clearly found a lot of fulfillment in.
It's interesting, though, that while her social life, her work life seemed so full, the documentary mentions her romantic life in her early 20s wasn't quite as active, maybe suggests a bit of independence, focusing elsewhere.
Could be.
But that changed when she took that sabbatical year in Australia starting June 2012. So we have this picture, right? Strong, independent woman, focused. But then Australia shifts things.
Exactly. Thousands of miles from home, new setting, and that's where Nadine met Daniel, another Irish national, a few years older, from Clondalkin in Dublin. He worked installing windows. The transcript doesn't give us a huge amount on his background, but their paths crossed over there.
And this wasn't some big whirlwind romance she told everyone about immediately, was it?
No, not at all. The documentary states their connection was initially something Nadine herself described as, well, informal. The kind of casual thing that happens when you're traveling, maybe without huge expectations.
Makes sense.
And interestingly, she initially only told her younger sister, PB, about Daniel.
What might that suggest? Keeping it quiet initially.
Well, that downplaying, it could mean a few things. Maybe she sensed it wasn't deeply serious, or perhaps she was just being pragmatic, a holiday romance, didn't want to make a big deal of it too soon.
Right.
It was actually PB who eventually told their mother, Claire, and Claire seemed to get it, that it was casual. There wasn't really any sign that Nadine saw it as a major relationship at that point. If she had, she probably would have said so herself.
Okay, so fast forward to June 2013. Nadine comes back to Ireland. But life's changed quite dramatically. She was pregnant shortly after meeting Daniel.
Yeah.
And he followed her to Dublin. They moved in together. Then, November 2013, their daughter Kia was born. And it's striking. The documentary really emphasizes Peebee's role around Kia's arrival.
Yes, that's really revealing about her support system, isn't it? It was Peebee who was right there for Kia's birth, offering support, sharing that huge moment. Peebee, not Daniel, took the first photos of mother and daughter.
Wow.
That really speaks volumes about the dynamic with Daniel right from the very beginning.
Absolutely. And the documentary makes it pretty clear that for the next few years, Nadine's main focus was Kia. She really wanted her daughter to have a father figure, even if her own feelings for Daniel weren't, deep love.
Right.
And he seemed, as the documentary puts it, largely disinterested in being a dad, generally irresponsible. It really highlights Nadine's selflessness, I think.
It does. She was putting Kia's well-being first, above her own sort of romantic needs. There's a particularly poignant detail about her making one last attempt to make things work in 2016,
Oh, yeah.
renting a house for the three of them. But when Daniel just didn't show up, she simply decided, okay, this is over.
Yeah, the documentary notes her decision wasn't really driven by anger or worry about him, but more just disappointment, like a matter of her own self-respect.
Exactly. Pride, perhaps.
Yeah. And even after that, Nadine still hoped Kia could have some relationship with her father, even though Claire, her mom, had understandable doubts that Daniel would ever really change. It just paints this picture of Nadine trying to handle a tough situation with a lot of maturity.
Yeah, she really was. And in contrast to all her efforts to build this stable family life, the documentary briefly mentions what Daniel was focusing on during this period.
What was that?
Training. Learning boxing. Now, it seems like a small detail, maybe, but it highlights this potential shift in his focus towards physicality.
Yeah.
Which, looking back,
Yeah, in hindsight.
could be seen as maybe a concerning development given the possessiveness that emerged later.
Right. Then we get to October 2019, and it seems like a really joyful time. Claire took Nadine to Rome for her 30th birthday. Sounds like a significant trip for them.
It really does. And what's striking about this part of the story is how content Nadine seemed with her life then. She told Claire, a romantic relationship wasn't even really a concern or a priority for her.
Yeah.
She felt fulfilled, especially being Kia's mom. Loved her job, loved her apartment, felt really proud of what she'd achieved. And there are even exciting prospects of modeling offers, suggesting a really bright future.
It's so poignant hearing about her finding that happiness, that footing, just before everything changed. Did the documentary offer any hint, though, any subtle signs back then that might have indicated the danger?
It really paints this picture of a woman who'd found her own happiness looking forward. But then they get back to Ireland, and the reality of dealing with Daniel just becomes frustrating again.
How so?
Broken promises about visiting Kia, his insistence on meeting Nadine face to face just to give her money for their daughter. It all set off alarm bells for Claire.
Yeah, I bet.
Claire rightly suspected Daniel was just using Kia as a way to stay in contact, maybe exert some control over Nadine.
Classic controlling behavior, often a red flag, isn't it?
Definitely. And despite Daniel being so unreliable, Nadine kept trying to present this positive image of him to Kia, always making excuses for his absences.
Oh, that's heartbreaking, trying to protect her daughter's view of her dad. But the situation with Daniel, it was escalating, wasn't it?
It was. He didn't like the idea of Nadine seeing other men. It actually forced her to keep her personal life private just to avoid his reactions.
Wow.
And then, late 2019, Nadine started a new relationship with a Turkish man. Daniel found out.
And how did he react?
His reaction was, telling. He sent Nadine a threatening text message, made it clear he knew about the new relationship. Now, the documentary points out Daniel hadn't been physically violent with Nadine before this.
Okay.
But this was a clear escalation. Intimidating messages started becoming a recurring thing.
Right. Then we move into those final days, just before the attack. December 5th, Nadine sends Daniel a WhatsApp message. Tells him, basically, stop threatening me. We are completely over, romantically speaking.
Yeah, drawing a line. But then, just a few days later, December 9th, they seemed to reach some kind of agreement about Kia.
What was that?
They agreed Daniel would babysit Kia on December 13th. Nadine was going out locally to celebrate her aunt's birthday.
Okay, so a seemingly normal co-parenting arrangement on the surface. He was living with his parents in Clondalkin at this point. She was in her apartment in Wicklow.
Exactly.
But then, early hours of December 14th, things take just a devastating turn. After midnight, Daniel messages Nadine, telling her to come home soon. Then he tries calling her twice, 12:57 a.m., 1:26 a.m. She doesn't answer. What do you think was going through his head then?
It's hard to know for sure, but his persistence contacting her so late, it suggests this mounting anxiety, maybe, or just that growing possessiveness becoming really volatile. Her not answering probably just fueled his agitation.
A few minutes later, Nadine did get back to her apartment. She changed into pajamas, carefully folded the dress she'd worn. The documentary emphasizes, we can't know the exact sequence of the attack, but what is tragically clear is the extreme violence that happened next.
And the most harrowing detail, just unbearable really, is that Kia, her 6-year-old daughter, witnessed this horrific assault.
Oh, God.
The documentary states that Kia screamed, begged her father to stop, pleaded with him not to kill her mom. It's just unimaginable. The terror for that child, the trauma is lifelong.
And Kia's desperate pleas. They didn't stop him. He just continued this brutal attack with his bare hands.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to comprehend.
Around 4 a.m., Nadine's neighbor, Amelia Kalenovich, heard screams. At first, she thought maybe it was early Christmas celebrations, something like that.
Right.
But then she realized someone was actually crying. Her instinct to go and check, it's really quite brave when you think about it.
Definitely. So Amelia goes over.
She found the front door open, hallway light on, and inside, she saw Nadine on the floor being violently attacked by Daniel. He was crouched over her. The documentary uses really stark language, describing him like a ferocious animal in that moment.
Oh, my God.
Understandably, Amelia was just terrified. She retreated to call for help.
I can't even imagine witnessing that. So she calls Nadine's family.
Yes. Overwhelmed by the horror, she went back to her place and called them. Claire's first fear was that Nadine had been stabbed, maybe in a domestic dispute. She and Kyle, Nadine's brother, rushed straight over. Daniel had already fled by then in his Volvo. Their quick response just shows how close that family was.
And the scene they walked into, just devastating. The documentary describes it like something from a horror film. Nadine's blood everywhere, on every surface, broken glass, mirrors scattered all over the floor, and then finding Nadine's body in the kitchen. Their screams, just unbearable. They immediately called emergency services.
Meanwhile, Daniel, as he was fleeing, he crashed his car about 30 kilometers away in Lara. Minor injuries, apparently.
Right.
And a passing motorist, John Beckley, stopped to help. Initially, he thought maybe Daniel was drunk, but this chance encounter turned out to be pretty significant.
How so? What happened?
As Beckley went up to Daniel, the situation took this shocking turn. Daniel just confessed. Said he'd killed his wife because she was with a friend.
He confessed. Just like that. What does that potentially reveal about his state of mind right after the attack?
Well, that spontaneous confession, it suggests maybe some level of awareness and a desire to explain his actions, maybe, even if it's in a self-serving way. Calling Nadine his wife, even though they weren't together anymore, it points to this really distorted view of their relationship he still held.
Yeah, it's disturbing.
And later, even in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, he apparently kept telling the paramedics how much he loved his girlfriend, just reinforcing this distorted reality he was in.
Unbelievable. So back at Nadine's apartment, paramedics and police arrive. The documentary notes the strong smell of blood, even as they approach the door.
Yeah.
One paramedic, Ian Clark, was particularly struck by the scene, the damage, Nadine's condition, said the image would stay with him his whole career. The sheer brutality clearly had a massive impact on the first responders.
Absolutely. And despite Nadine being unconscious, her mother, Claire, and Linda, presumably another family member or friend, were desperately trying CPR, giving her mouth to mouth.
Oh, bless them.
But assessing her injuries was incredibly difficult just because of the amount of blood and debris everywhere. Around 6:43 a.m., she was rushed to St. Vincent's Hospital. The family's immediate efforts, it just underscores their love and desperation in that moment.
So at the hospital, 10:58 a.m., Nadine's admitted to intensive care. The medical report detailed severe trauma, head, neck, chest, a staggering 64 injuries, many of which, the documentary says, couldn't be explained just by medical intervention.
64 injuries.
Yeah. She needed numerous blood transfusions. The sheer number just speaks to the ferocity of that attack.
It's horrific. And there's this poignant detail. Claire brought some of Nadine's personal things to the hospital. A photo of Kia, her toiletries, perfume, more photos of her daughter. She hoped these familiar things might offer some comfort if or when Nadine woke up.
Oh, that's just heartbreaking.
Despite how severe the injuries clearly were, Claire clung to hope. Hope for recovery, imagining her daughter coming back in any form. It just speaks to that enduring power of a mother's love, doesn't it? Even facing the unimaginable.
It really does. So while Nadine is fighting for her life, Daniel has his first court appearance, December 16th. Charged with assault causing serious harm, remanded in custody. And Claire actually witnessed Nadine being taken for a brain scan, desperately urging her daughter to keep fighting.
Oh, gosh. But tragically, the fight ended. December 17th, 3:16 p.m., Nadine passed away from those catastrophic injuries. She never regained consciousness.
That's awful.
The superintendent leading the investigation, Declan McCarthy, he described the violence as the worst he'd seen in 40 years of service. Doctors echoed that. The impact of this crime, it was felt so deeply by everyone involved, the investigators, the medical staff. Dr. Linda Mulligan, the chief state pathologist, conducted the autopsy.
And Daniel, in his police interview, the documentary recounts he actually described the blows.
Yes, he did. He even detailed using a tire pump charger with the cable wrapped around his knuckles, apparently to make the impact more forceful. He claimed their relationship had been on and off for 3 months and still referred to Nadine as his future wife. It just reveals this disturbing level of detail alongside this continued delusion about what their relationship actually was.
It's chilling. Nadine's funeral, December 22nd.
It sounds like it was a massive outpouring of grief.
It really was. A testament to how loved she was. Around 1,000 people packed St. Mary and St. Peter's Church in Arklow, hundreds more outside. And the symbols on her coffin spoke volumes, ivory roses and a pair of flower-filled stilettos, representing her vibrant life, her personality.
That's a beautiful touch. Claire's eulogy delivered with incredible strength, I imagine.
Yeah, expressing her love and pride. And during the service, other family members brought items to the altar symbolizing parts of Nadine's life. David, her dad, brought her handbag. Kyle, the photo of Nadine and Kia. PB, another pair of stilettos. And Tanid, presumably another sibling or relative, a photo album.
Wow. Such poignant gestures, giving a glimpse of the life so tragically cut short. Yeah. Father Michael Martog spoke very movingly about how unnatural it is for parents to bury their young daughter. He emphasized that death didn't have the final word, that Nadine would live on through Kia. He challenged her friends to honor her memory by living honestly, decently, and offered heartfelt words directly to Kia. Tanid and Pebe also read brief, heartbreaking tributes. Then Nadine was laid to rest in St. Gabriel's Cemetery. The whole community's grief was just palpable.
Such profound loss. So Daniel's case was postponed, and then January 14th, 2020, he was formally charged with murder.
Correct. But he pleaded guilty only to manslaughter. His claim was intoxication, cannabis, pills, rum, and he didn't have the intent for murder.
Right, the intoxication defense. So that plea meant it had to go to trial.
Exactly. The trial was held before a judge and a jury, 7 men, 5 women. The prosecution described the attack as, quote, grotesque and unnatural.
Claire attended most of it.
She did, remarkably, most of the 3-week trial. Though understandably, she wasn't there when they showed Daniel's police interview video. Her strength in just facing him in court must have been immense.
Absolutely. And the documentary highlights Daniel's apparent lack of remorse throughout.
Yeah, it seems so. Never apologized. Reportedly behaved appallingly, even blowing kisses to his mother in court.
What, seriously?
That's what the transcript indicates. And hearing the testimony, the ICU nurse describing Nadine as unrecognizable, Dr. Linda detailing the 64 injuries for 2 hours.
Oh, God, the family had to sit through that.
They did. While Daniel apparently showed no emotion, and then later was seen greeting his own family with affection. That disconnect must have been incredibly painful for Nadine's family to witness.
I can't even fathom. David, Nadine's father, his feeling that Daniel's plea not guilty to murder, only manslaughter, showed a sick mentality, a total lack of remorse. That resonates, doesn't
It really does. Ultimately, the jury didn't buy the manslaughter plea. Daniel was convicted of murder, sentenced to life imprisonment.
Life imprisonment. But the documentary points out that in Ireland, the average time served for life is, what, around 18 years?
Okay.
With parole possible after 12?
That's the system, yeah.
And that prospect caused immense distress for Claire and David, understandably. Daniel himself reportedly showed disbelief at the murder verdict. Claire believed his ego was so big he just always expected the jury to believe him.
Seems that way. After his conviction, Daniel apparently received death threats in Wheatfield Prison, had to be put in a special protection wing.
Right.
And a prison source mentioned Daniel saw himself as the victim, which just corroborates Claire's assessment of his self-perception, really. This total lack of accountability.
Sadly not uncommon in these cases. He appealed.
He did appeal, yeah, and apparently made claims he'd be back on the streets soon. That led to him being transferred to Midlands Prison for his own safety.
Meanwhile, the Lott family, how did they cope?
They focused on Kia, trying to create good Christmas memories for her in 2021. Finding joy in her despite their crushing grief, their resilience is just incredible.
It really is. Pebe shared a moving video tribute on what would have been Nadine's 32nd birthday.
Yes, and it poignantly included Kia singing in memory of her mother. For Claire, the pain, it remained unending. Recurring nightmares. The family made a conscious decision. They no longer speak Daniel's name.
That speaks volumes, doesn't it? About the lasting impact.
Absolutely. In 2022, David spoke about how December, Christmas, it's still incredibly difficult. But Kia brings him joy. He talked about profoundly missing Nadine's smile, her energy, her humor, just her unique way of being.
Oh, the hole she left must be immense. And then there was an incident with Daniel in prison.
Yeah, January 2023, he was attacked by another inmate in Midlands prison, suffered significant facial injuries, needed hospitalization. It was believed to be an attack by someone trying to gain status within the prison. He'll reportedly bear the scars for life. Just highlights the harsh realities of prison life, I suppose.
And to support Kia, the Nadine Lott Trust Fund was set up.
Yes, to ensure her financial security and well-being. It's really a testament to the outpouring of support for Nadine and her daughter from the wider community.
That's good to hear, at least. So this deep dive, really looking into the tragic story of Nadine Lott through that documentary transcript, it just underscores the devastating impact of domestic violence, the profound loss of such a vibrant young life.
It really does. The details we've examined paint this harrowing picture of escalating possessiveness, control, and ultimately just horrific, fatal violence.
And for you, listening, this incredibly difficult story, it might leave you reflecting on several things. Maybe, what are those subtle signs of controlling behavior in relationships that could escalate? How can we even begin to understand the complexities of human nature that can lead to such tragic outcomes? And just, what is the lasting impact of this kind of violence on the families, the communities left behind?
We really encourage you to take some time, reflect on what we've discussed today. If this deep dive has sparked maybe a desire to learn more about domestic violence, awareness, prevention, we really urge you to seek out reputable resources. Understanding these dynamics is such a crucial step towards preventing future tragedies like this one.
Absolutely. And ultimately, it's just vital that we remember Nadine Lott. Remember her for the bright, loving person she clearly was, not just as a victim of this horrific crime. By engaging with these difficult stories, as painful as they are, hopefully we contribute to greater awareness and maybe, just maybe, help prevent similar tragedies. That seems to honor the aim of the documentary itself, shedding light on these impactful crimes.